Hi guys, so welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today's we are going to focus on an array method called the reduce. So this is an array method in JavaScript that helps us manipulate the arrays themselves. So the array dot reduce, not reduce, the array dot reduce. Okay, let me just change this. The array dot reduce function in JavaScript has several use cases. But the commonly used one is to transform an array into a single value. So it accepts two parameters. So the first parameter is required and the second parameter is optional. So the first parameter is called the callback function and the next is called the initial value. So point to note is that this method takes in two arguments, only two. Don't confuse yourself. It only takes two arguments, and the first argument is the callback function and the next argument is the initial value. So the initial value is optional, but the callback function is required. So whatever happens here is just like we did with the map function. So this callback is called each time on each item in the array. Okay, and then we'll see what parameters do this function accept itself. So let's continue to the callback function. So the callback function of the reduce the callback function of the reduce function takes in four parameters. So here's how it gets tricky. So we said the reduce function takes in two arguments, the callback function and the initial value. And then the callback function itself takes in four arguments. So the first argument is called the total or the accumulator, and it's a required argument. So what does this argument do and what does it hold? So it holds the initial value, as we say, this initial value. So the first argument holds the initial value if it's the first iteration. Okay, so during the first iteration, during the start of the loop, and as we said, the reduce function calls this callback function on each item on the array. So during the first loop, if the initial value is passed, the first argument holds the value of the initial value. Okay. So what if the initial value is not passed? So this accumulator carries the value of the first item in the array. Okay. And then this value during the subsequent loops or iterations, it holds the return value of the previous iteration. So I hope that one might be an issue, but we'll show you when we go to the practicals. So the next argument is the current value. So just like the map function, the current value is the current element in the loop. The next argument is optional. It's called the current index. This is the current index of the current item in the loop. The final optional argument is the array itself. This is the array the current element belongs to. So the next thing we check out is what does this return? So what does the reduce function return? So the reduce function returns the result of the callback function at the last call. Okay. So we're going to open VS Code so that we can check it out. Okay, so here's my VS Code. Let me just zoom in so that you can see. And then, so this is our array of numbers. And as I have said, the reduce function can help us transform arrays. This is an array method. So the reduce function is an array method. So it only works in arrays. So the reduce function is is an array method. So that's the first thing we need to know. So you need an array to work through it. And then we said, let me just use this syntax so that we can see the reduce function. You can see even VS Code is giving me some highlights here. So it first takes in a callback function, and it takes in current value, current index, and the array. So the first argument we said is a callback function, and so we can simply use it on our numbers array because it's still an array instead of constructing a new array. So let me create a function, call it my callback. This is the function that we are going to pass to our reduce function, and then we can give it an initial value. So the initial value depends on what do you want to achieve. So what do you want to achieve in this? We want to count the total. So you want to create the total. So the initial value should be the total whenever the loop is starting. So the total when the loop is starting might be, we can start at 0. So let's go slow. We said the goal of the reduce function is to run a function that is the callback function on each item in the array. So it runs the callback function on item 1, item 2, and then when it runs on item 1, the return value. So let me write. So here we have 4 arguments. So we have the first argument is called the accumulator or the total. And the next item is the current value. So you can give them any name you want. So I can say anything here I want. I can say cow. It still work. But we need to be descriptive because this is the current item in the loop. So the current item in the loop, we can say it's a number. The next argument, this carries was the current index. We can say I for the current index. And the last argument is the array. So these two are optional. And in case you don't need them, you don't need to worry about them. So you can remove these two in case we don't actually need them. We don't need the index to get the total. We don't need the array to get the total. So we'll just focus on the 2 required arguments. So it dictates this. So the reduce function takes in 2 arguments, the callback function and the initial value. The initial value is optional. So let's start with the first scenario. So first scenario, the initial value is passed. Remember, we are doing an accumulation, and if the initial value is passed, the accumulator becomes holds the value of the initial value. So I hope you get me. If the initial value is passed, the accumulator during the first iteration becomes so let me show you. So let's start with the first. Let me just create a comment here. That's too wrong. I'll just write first. During the first iteration, this is the start of the loop. This is the first time the callback function is being called on the first element in the array. Okay. So in case the initial value is passed, the accumulator gets the value of the initial value. So in our case, the accumulator will be 0. Okay. And the number or the current value, this is always called the current value, but I give it a new name. So our number will be 1. That's loop 1. And whatever is returned here is what becomes the next accumulator in the next loop. Okay. So as we said, whatever is returned in the callback function becomes the new accumulator for the next loop or for the next iteration. So what do we want to do? During the first iteration, remember we are doing a total. So we have the current we have the accumulator and we have the number. So what we can do is return the accumulator plus the number. Okay, that's the first iteration. So during the first iteration, we did add the accumulator, which is 0 plus the first element in the plus the first element. So the first element is 1. Let's go to the second iteration. So during the second iteration, the callback function is called yet again with the second item in the array. And then we do the same thing. We said the accumulator becomes the return value of the previous iteration. So what was the return value of the previous iteration? It was the accumulator plus the number. So accumulator plus the number is 1. And the number now is 2. That iteration, the accumulator will now become the previous accumulator, the previous callback's return value. So we are in loop 2. So our accumulator is 1 and our number is 2, and we add them. So the return value is the new accumulator for the next iteration. So we'll do 1 plus 2, which is 3. And the number, just come here and check 3. Okay. So I hope you understand. No, you can understand what we are currently doing. So let's do the third iteration, fourth. During the fourth iteration, what is our accumulator holding? Our new accumulator will be the result of the previous. So now this one will be 6. So we can do, this one is 6. And the number now becomes 4. So during the fifth, ACC becomes 7. No, 10. And the number now becomes 5. And now during the last iteration, the accumulator now is, this is the 60th time. So the accumulator now is, ACC now is 15. And since we don't have yet another number, now it doesn't go to the 6th iteration. We can see we only have 5 numbers. So it doesn't actually go to the 60th iteration. And that now this accumulator is returned. Because now it can't be returned to the next iteration, this is now the final value of the accumulator. And in case we do count this, so this is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, let's do that one more time. So we said, think of this as an iteration. So whenever it starts, the accumulation for the first iteration, think of it as, so we said whenever the initial value is passed, that's the new accumulation. And whatever is returned, so let's go through this again. So we have accumulator of 0 right now. And then we pass it a number 1, the first element, which is number 1. And the number 1 is at index 0. Whatever is returned during the next iteration, the new accumulator becomes whatever was returned on the previous iteration. So which is the accumulator, which is 0 plus 1. Then the number now skips to the second number. We go third. We have the accumulator will be, now the accumulator will be 0 plus 1 plus 2. I'm just going adding. And then the number changes now. It will be 3. Then fourth, ACC will be 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. And then the number now shifts to the next number, which is 4. So you have to remember that the result of the callback function becomes the new accumulator on the second iteration, on the next iteration, not the second, sorry. So if we continue like this, fifth, we get ACC is equals to 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. The number now shifts to the last number, which is 5. Okay. Now, the return here, the return of this iteration, the new accumulator. So we do have the current accumulator. I think we should add the next accumulator. So yeah, I can see it. So we can do the next accumulator so that, so during the first iteration, the accumulator is 0, the number is 1. The next accumulation will be the result of the my callback function. So the result of the callback is the next accumulation for the next iteration. So we can just write it in a one-liner so that it will be easier, which is 0 plus 1. That's exactly what you're doing, 0 plus 1. Okay. So we go next, second. So I hope this one will be clearer. So during the next accumulate, we have 1, and the number now is the number now is 2, and then the next accumulation will be 1 plus 2, which is 3. And then we move like that. So that ACC is now 3, and the number is now 3. Next ACC is equals to 6. Fourth ACC is 6. Number is 4. I'm just reading from these numbers. Even if they were shuffled, it will still be the same. Next ACC is equals to 10. Then the last one, because this is the last element, the ACC is 10, the number is 5. So next ACC will be equals to 15. But now, since we don't have yet another item in our array, the next ACC gets spitted out and becomes the return of the reduce function. So next ACC becomes the result of the reduce function. I hope that made sense. So I can just keep it, so there's no problem. So you can see this is what we are doing in our function. And then, as we said during arrow function, so an arrow function is a function that automatically returns. So this one is, if you have a function like this function automatically returns the right hand side number or the right hand side of itself. So this one is achievable if you don't have multi-line code. So instead of having my callback like that, can create an anonymous function here, takes in the number, and then returns ACC plus number. And then our functions become a little bit easier. So this is simply a callback function, but it's a callback function which is an anonymous function, which happens to be another function which returns this. You can remember the function we had. So in case we store this in as total, and then now we come here and run node index.js. So it not console log, so total, and then we get our 15, which is our accumulation. So essentially that's how we That's how you work with the reduce function in the array. Basically, just understanding which arguments are being passed and how the arguments work, you can be able to manipulate arrays as much as you want. So I'll show you a final example here, and then we can call it a day. So here is a question, add the total. So we need to add the total of these fruits. So nothing new here, just applying the concepts of the reduce function. So since we are starting out, you can start by creating the function which accepts the ACC, and then now this one you can call it a fruit because it's the current item. But now it can't be the fruits because it has other stuff. We can call it, or even the item, you can give it any name. Then you come here and do fruits dot reduce, give it my callback, and then we want to get the total. So what should we essentially start with? Start at 0. So we can say const total is equals to that. We have not even started working on it, but we have the syntax working. As we said, the callback function, when the initial value, most of the time the initial value has to be passed. And as you are beginning, there's no need of pushing for more scenarios. This is the common most scenario that you might find. So the initial value is passed. That means the initial value becomes the accumulator. The accumulator grabs the value of the initial value. And then we get the current item. So what do we want to do in pseudocode? What we want to do is to loop through this and add the totals and return them. So currently we have the accumulator, which is 0. So what we can do, we can return accumulator plus, what do we want to add? We currently have the item. So the item is this whole item plus item dot total. Do you understand what is happening? So let's go through our same process. So we said, so first we said the accumulator takes in the value of the initial, which is 0. Okay. The item is, so this is the item. I don't know whether I should type it, it will take long. You can copy paste here so that it is easier to understand. This is the item actually we are dealing with. And we are doing a total. We don't care about the description. We don't care about anything else. So we need to know how to start working with the total. To work with the total, we just need to work with this. So we just have to work with this, the total, and then continue adding the totals as we go. So we need to grab the current item dot total and add it to the accumulator, which now becomes 3. So let's do the same for the purpose. So the accumulator, this is the next. Say this is the next ACC. And this one is the next ACC. So the next ACC here is 3. So the accumulator becomes 3. Then we add 3 to the 2.5, we get 5.5. And then we do the same for the final. We get the ACC now is 5.5. The item is this item here. The next ACC now becomes 5.5 plus 12, which is 17.5. Okay. I hope you're understanding. So in code form, we have the accumulator, the item, and whatever is returned here becomes the new accumulator for the next item, which now you continue adding to the item.total, and then finally we can console log total. Not index, so it's node example1 dot, we get the 17.5. Okay. And then as we said, you can put an anonymous function here, which accepts the ACC and the item and returns the ACC plus item.total. Then now we don't need this one. So this is the syntax you'll find in most books, tutorials, and what have you. So thank you guys for watching. And I'm going to add this gist. I'll add the example one and the index in a gist and share in the description for the YouTube video. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And have a good day.